Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monty Belmonte.
And I'm Khalees Smith. I'm Khalees Smith. I know my name. Later in the show, we head straight into the fungal kingdom where the rules are weird and the denizens are tasty.
What? No. It's just a tour with local mushroom growers, Mycoterra Farm in South Deerfield.
Fine. But we'll also have a conversation with Kari Castango, who has just completed swimming the entirety of the Connecticut River. She'll be joined by the new director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, Rebecca Todd.
Our first guest is Holly Black, the #1 New York Times best-selling author of over 30 fantasy novels for kids and teens.
She has been a finalist for an Eisner Award and the Lodestar Award, a recipient of the Maya.
How do you say that one? That award you want?
It's
Mythopoeic.
Mythopoeic Award, a Nebula, and a Newbery Honor. Her books have been translated into 32 languages worldwide and adapted for film. She currently lives here in the 413 with her husband and son in a house with a secret library.
Holly has just co-written a book called Sir Morian. Her co-author also joins us. Khalees Smith is a poet, originally from Roxbury in Boston. After graduating from Kenyon College, she released her book, Finger and Thumb. She currently lives right here in Springfield and is the flipping co-host of this show!
Yeah.
Congratulations, you two.
Thanks.
On Sir Morian. Khalees, you told me, I think it felt like 3 or 4 years ago.
It was definitely longer than that.
I'm co-writing a book with Holly Black, and I was like, oh my God, Holly Black. I love Holly Black, all of her fantasy. Me and my whole family love the Spiderwick Chronicles, which you co-wrote, Holly, with Tony DiTerlizzi. And then I didn't hear about it again for years.
There was like a 3-year window where things just didn't happen.
That is the way that books work. I mean, this is your second book, Khalees, but Holly... Is this the usual pace for a book release?
It is not. However, I was warned that this is the pace for picture books.
Oh.
And that because we took a minute to write it and work it out. We would meet up at different coffee shops and get it together. But then when they attached Ebony, she does a lot of work. And so she had to fit us into her schedule.
And Ebony is Ebony Glenn, who illustrated this gorgeous book.
So
and
fantastic.
Yes, nobody wants to see my drawings.
I kind of do now.
I mean,
but I think
they're
this
not
book,
nearly as good as what Ebony did. I am real good at words.
You're nervous because you're the guest today,
this
Khalees.
doesn't happen. Usually I just get to ask the questions.
For those who don't know about Sir Morian, let's ask you, Khalees, about who Sir Morian is, the co-author of Sir Morian with Holly Black, Khalees Smith.
So Sir Morian is the creatively named Black Knight of the Round Table.
Why would they call him that?
Well, because Moors are brown. And so everybody brown was kind of considered a Moor at the time. Am I right about this? Yeah. So because Europe and... But there is a romance about Sir Morian joining the Round Table. He goes on adventures with Sir Gawain and Lancelot and is looking for his dad.
Sir Aglavale.
Where did you encounter this story, Holly Black? Because this is, the Arthurian legends are legends, and there's little bits of actual history woven into those sort of things. Where did you and Khalees come across this story of Sir Morian?
So in sort of reading through Arthiana, there are some stories that you come too late because they are not part of the popular, ways that we retell the Arthurian story. And, the story of Sir Morian was one of them. And it was really surprising to me because I did not know that Sir Morian was a member of the Round Table.
Yeah,
and
he's not a Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's the only Arthur.
And that's canon.
And honestly, we're all glad of that because it would have been done in a way that is not really great.
You can be sure of that.
Yes.
And, I admit that, part of it was after I adopted my son, who's Black, I was looking for more representation, and specifically more representation in the landscape of folklore and fantasy. And I don't remember whether I ever ran into Sir Morian before that, but I remember feeling really kind of surprised to be thinking about it and then realize that I was having a lot of trouble finding more resources for it. And certainly I didn't find any picture books.
Yeah. And so now there is a picture book. When does this book officially come out, Khalees?
It comes out next Monday.
Yeah.
Officially. Next Monday is when it comes out officially.
It comes out next Tuesday.
No, this is the 23rd on the thing.
Books
Oh,
only
the
come out
24th.
on Tuesdays.
Okay, well, fine.
See, this is the things you learn when you are working on your second book with somebody who's written so many books and is the number one New
my
York Times.
first book was poetry. Like, I didn't have to care. I just made the poems, I put them out, and expected no one to read them.
Yeah.
And now this is a thing where I have to pay way more attention to than the last endeavor that I was a part of.
And you'll find Khalees missing from several shows because of things that are connected to the book Sir Morian.
right.
The book launch is happening at An Unlikely Story in Plainville, Massachusetts, out of the 413, but an excellent bookstore that was created by Jeff Kinney, the author of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. If you're ever in the 508 area code, I can't recommend that bookstore more highly. How did this relationship begin between Holly Black, the author, and Khalees Smith, who had not yet written a children's book or any type of book like this apart from a book of poetry?
So we met through a mutual friend and just started hanging out and talking about books we'd read. And I do remember one time Khalees came over and I had a copy of Finger and Thumb and she was like, "Where did you get this?" And I was like, "I bought it.
and
It's
I'm
for
like,
sale."
I was pretty sure that was out of print now.
Finger and Thumb is your book of poetry that we
Yes.
mentioned. Yeah. And that's where the creative relationship started to begin? Or how did it germinate that you two wanted to write this particular book together?
So Holly approached me and asked if I would work on adapting this story for as a children's book, and I like a challenge, so I was like, sure, that seems real fun. And what came next was this really brilliant breakdown of the romance itself from Holly in a very YA fashion that I still basically refer to whenever I am trying to give the cliff notes of what Sir Morian actually is as a story to people. Like I channel your voice whenever I'm explaining Sir Morian to other people. It's like, and then they fight for a bunch of days, and then like he can't get any information because racism. But yeah, so I agreed to work on it with her, and we just kept meeting at coffee shops, like you said, and to get it tight and change the language to be something that was way more accessible than Arthurian English.
Yeah.
And, Khalees being a poet was really great because she could keep me from expanding. And, it's funny because many of my friends who write very, very long books have mocked me for how short my books are. But compared to this,
Yes.
They are enormous tomes.
How many pages in a picture book? There's like a rule, right?
32 is
32
what we were given.
pages. And it's not like it is filled with text.
No.
So how hard is it for two people to write one 32-page book with so few words?
You spend a lot of time together saying, so this sentence, what if it was slightly different?
And some of that we get around with going, hey, maybe we make this a speech bubble, and then it doesn't count as our text.
Because are like the publishers saying don't put too many words in this picture book? Like, is there a formula to how many words should be in a picture book geared towards kids this
There's
age?
not a formula.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
But it has changed over the years. Picture books used to be much more text heavy. And the age of the picture book reader used to be a lot older. And it's interesting, it has become a much younger form and a much shorter form. And in part, I think some of that has to do with parents reading to kids at night.
Yeah.
They
We gotta
want to
get this
be
thing
able
over
to get
with. I
right.
already
They
read
want
it
to
17
be
times
able to get through it at a reasonable clip.
This sounds like maybe experience.
Yes. We're speaking with the #1 New York Times bestselling author, Holly Black, and our very own Khalees Smith from the Fabulous 413, who have co-authored this book, which will come out next Tuesday, because now I know that's when books come out, just like when records used to come out, but now they come out on Fridays.
Right.
Sir Morian, The Legend of a Knight of the Round Table. It's illustrated beautifully by Ebony Glenn. For some reason, it reminds me of like 90s animation and also Dragon Slayer, the video game. The illustrations in this.
That's a good Venn diagram.
Yeah, I don't know
That's
why.
great.
That's what it jumps out to me. And it is about a so-called Black Knight of the Round Table who was a Moor and loosely based in Arthurian legends, which may or may not be true to a certain degree or not. Hard to tell. But what I love about this is it's clear that your hero is black. But it's not a huge tenet of the storyline. Is that by design, where it's just about seeing yourself in this book rather than having to overcome the trials and tribulations of racism explicitly?
I think yes, in no small part because the part of the text where he encounters problems because of his race, we just had to wholeheartedly like cut out. Like it's a little complicated for the age group in the way that we need to approach it. And so it's just easier to be like, no, he's just brown. Hey.
What did you encounter when doing the research about this character, Sir Morian, that were some of the racist things that he did encounter in this time frame?
So what we did was sort of scoop out the middle of the story.
Yeah.
Because it's a slightly complicated story. And we told everything that happens in this book happens in the romance, as Cleese was saying, which is what they call them, even though they're not necessarily romantic in the way we think of them.
Right.
But his story is one specific story, and he is hanging out with his new knight friends, and then they get to a crossroads, and they split up, and they have 3 different adventures. Mm-hmm. And essentially, Sir Morian is the only one who chooses the correct path.
Yes.
But unfortunately, for a picture book, the correct path is he doesn't wind up in a huge fight with somebody. So the other 2 knights make disastrous mistakes. Sir Morian goes to town where he encounters racism in the form of not being allowed into a place. He gets super hungry, and he cannot get food. Like no one will. And he is as a young man, when he gets hungry, he gets hangry.
Yes. Yes.
So he's having a really rough time
Yes.
because he's really hangry.
I think, and he's trying to get a barge to the Hermitage where his dad
right.
is, and they won't let him board the boat for the same reason.
And then and so he runs back into, he saves one of them. I don't remember
He saves
which one.
Gawain first,
Right.
because Gawain has gotten himself into some terrible trouble sleeping with the wrong person and angering an entire town.
You can see why we didn't put this in the picture, but
And then they have to go rescue Lancelot from a terrible fight he's gotten into with a beast, because Lancelot just goes off and fights beasts. That's what he does. But this one was a little bit more than he could handle. Just frankly, like Lancelot in this whole romance, getting into
Yes.
fights he shouldn't be in.
That's 1,000%. And then he jumps onto the barge. They're like, you can't be on this. Whoa, here you are.
Yeah.
Some of that gets left out of this 32-page version of the story, but it's still...
if we do a sequel,
That's
I
true.
have an idea for how we could do this stuff.
Okay. I'm down.
What about expanding it into more of a YA type situation? Are there any appropriate books for kids who are teenagers in today's contemporary world that talk about Sir Morian, this knight of the Round Table who was black?
That's a great question.
Because I know a number 1 New York Times bestselling author who's written such great YA fantasy.
There is a really great series of books which I am now I'm going to find, and I'm blanking on them, but it's by a black writer, and it centers a girl who discovers her ancestry. So it's not specifically about Sir Morian, but I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I'm going to find it.
We can include it with the podcast.
And before I leave today, I will tell you, because I can't believe that I'm blanking on it, but it is Legendborn.
Okay.
So good.
Cool.
Cannot recommend it highly enough.
Yay.
Before we let you go, Holly Black, and before Khalees Smith returns to her role as co-host of
Where
the show,
I can actually like speak instead of just stuttering the whole time.
what do you want the reader to leave with when they read this book? First with you, Holly.
I want them to have a great time. It's a celebration of friendship, and it's a little bit about how sometimes you fight with your friends. And so I hope they have fun, and I hope they feel warm inside.
What about you, author Khalees Smith? What do you want the reader to leave with when they read your new book with Holly Black, Sir Morian, the legend of A Knight of the Round Table?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we wanted to keep was like this idea that of friendship and kind of building community, and even if you're looking outside of your means in a sort of way that like maybe having people on your side can make things a little bit easier. Even if you fight, you can still kind of get through it.
Khalees Smith and Holly Black. The new book is Sir Morian. It's out on Tuesday. You're going to hear more about this book from the kids from NEPM's Media Lab, who did an interview with Khalees back in the summer. That's coming up.
It was so much easier to talk to them instead of you somehow.
Too much inside baseball. This book is great. It's wonderful. It's gorgeous. The illustrations by Ebony Glenn are wonderful, and we will continue to talk about it as the book launches out there.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Later in the show, Kari Costango, who just became the first person to swim the entire length of the Connecticut River.
We'll also talk with the brand new executive director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, Rebecca Todd.
Up next, Into the Mushroom Kingdom, which you may know better as South Deerfield, will take you to Mycoterra Farm.
But there are no plumbers and no princesses and no turtles. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Well, here we are at Mushroom Headquarters in Western Mass in Deerfield with Mycoterra Farm, which grew out of a basement and ended up being the biggest growing indoor mushroom facility in Massachusetts.
It's been such a wet year, I have mushrooms growing in my basement right now. That is probably not how you got started, is it, Julia Coffey here in South Deerfield?
No, I didn't get started with the moldy basement, but I get that question a lot. We grow our mushrooms indoors year-round. I actually got into mushrooms through a fascination in the soil sciences, and it's been a over 20-year journey now, which landed us here in South Deerfield, CISA's home base. It's a great wild mushroom season, though. We get a lot of people bringing stuff to get our expert identification, which I really don't like to do.
Yeah. That's a little bit of a life or death situation if you get it wrong.
Yeah, and all the rain this year has made a really fantastic summer and fall for wild mushroom forage, but we just keep them going year round.
Do you ever sprout from wild spore?
No. The cultivation technique we use for growing is a vegetative propagation technique. We work with established cultures of mycelium growing on grain. That's the spawn. And the process that we use is more like dividing strawberries or planting potato tubers. You get a more consistent and reliable result.
If you're going to have a business, you have to figure out a way to rely on it.
You don't want to
Yes.
just fight your way through all 435 genders of mushroom to find the couple that'll give you the proper fruiting.
Exactly.
Can we go meet the mushrooms?
You want to meet the mushrooms? Yeah. Well, you're starting here in our farm store. This is like the very end of the road for the mushrooms. And we have our products, mushroom jerky, mushroom kits, dried mushrooms, fresh mushrooms, mushroom extracts, and a number of other products from other local farms and producers. But we're going to go back through the building. First, we're going to go into our commercial kitchen. This
Smells good in here.
The kitchen was funded by the Food Security Infrastructure Grant. We use it for our value-added processing, and we make it available for other local producers, food carts, farms.
Is that why there's a bunch of food trucks parked outside?
Exactly.
That's where they live when they're not out serving us. They live here at Mycoterra.
All right, we're going to continue through. This is some dry storage area and home of mass food delivery. In addition to Mycoterra Farm, I run mass food delivery. We established it during the pandemic to be able to continue to connect our products with our customers, and we source products from local farms and producers throughout Massachusetts.
Here we go behind this giant door.
We're going through mass food deliveries, walk-in cooler real quick. We have a lot of different environments here.
Yeah, right.
It's gonna totally throw off
It's
your
cold now.
equilibrium.
It smells mushroomy in this room.
There's always a lot of smells here.
It is a farm.
Right here, we are preparing our substrate. The substrate is the mushroom's food. It's growing habitat. In this ribbon mixer, we're mixing hardwood sawdust with, it looks like we're doing shiitake substrate today, so that's getting supplemented with wheat bran. We adjust the moisture content, and then we bag the material into a specialized autoclavable plastic bag that's outfitted with a little filter patch that filters out contaminants down to 0.2 microns, but allows gas exchange. The mycelium, the vegetative part of the mushroom life cycle, breathes oxygen and respires carbon dioxide. So it does need fresh air, but that filter patch is really important in keeping out competitors. So
mushrooms are like people because they breathe oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide?
yeah, actually the fungal kingdom and the animal
Is that
kingdom.
where Mario and Luigi try to... Your princess is in another castle?
The mushroom kingdom and the fungal kingdom have a more recent common ancestor than any other kingdom. So we are more closely related to mushrooms than we are plants, bacteria, viruses, or anything else.
Nice.
So
More disturbing.
Yeah. See or play The Last of Us.
Fungus is also like one of those last science frontiers where they're still not quite sure how it works.
that's one of the things that really attracted me to the mycology field. I was like young 20s and kind of jaded, and the fact that there are so many undescribed species and their physiology and chemistry, there's still a lot of mystery in the fungal kingdom, and like mystery just keeps life exciting.
You don't have to go to space to find aliens. They are both under the sea and under your dirt.
Right now, we're mixing the substrate and bagging it. The substrate bags get folded and put on these carts. We cook 900 bags a day. The carts get pushed into our autoclave. It's basically a large pressure cooker. It's 5 feet in diameter and 33 feet long. We're going to fit 10 carts with 90 bags each, and that's going to get sterilized at 20 psi for 4 hours. We're going to go back to that door, and I'm going to take you in to see the lab environment. I feel like a lot of magic happens in there.
Now this room smells real mushroomy.
Booties before you cross
Oh, we got to take our shoes off.
Here's some booties.
It's just like being at home.
Shaking my booty.
We can see mushrooms happening.
Yeah,
already.
yeah. Tell us what's happening in this room that we just put the
So-
booties on. What we're seeing look like giant bags of dirt with little mushrooms poking out of them.
And some of them look like shiitakes, and some of them look like king trumpet.
These are all shiitakes in here. So we call this our lab anteroom. It's basically a staging room for the fully colonized material that's ready to go out to the greenhouses. What you're looking at here are things that started to auto-fruit or began fruiting in the lab. We don't want them fruiting in there. So these are getting pulled to move out, and they've gotten a little ahead of us.
And
So,
are you still going to be able to use these?
oh yeah, we can still grow from them. We'll remove the mushrooms that formed inside the bag when we get them started. And that's like deadheading a petunia or plant in the garden. If you remove the fruits that are on there, it redirects the energy into the viable crop. So now we can cross this line.
Here's another room filled with thousands of bags of substrate, which looks like dirt. Whoa.
Out the end of the autoclave.
The giant pressure cooker autoclave has a tunnel that looks like a black hole with train tracks coming out of it.
Right into our cool down room. So this room is insulated from the rest of the lab. It has a clean air intake. After we open the autoclave in the morning, the racks get unloaded into this room and allowed to cool down for a couple hours. Maintaining an environment that is conducive for the mushrooms we're trying to grow helps them stay resilient against any competitor organisms. Once the bags come down in temperature, it takes a couple hours to reach about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The carts get rolled out into our inoculation space. So we can go along the journey that our blocks follow. Here's a bag of spawn, and this is a mix of grains that has the mushroom mycelium living on it. Mycelium, that vegetative tissue, grain is a great vehicle for transfer. It's got a good balanced nutrition to support the mycelial growth. It has a good form. It helps protect the mycelium. That 6-pound bag of grain will be used to inoculate 30 bags of sterilized sawdust. We'll load 30 bags onto this table in front of laminar flow hoods. It's a HEPA filter with a half horsepower blower pushing high velocity air through the filter and gives us a sterile airflow to work in front of. Then they get shelved and labeled and rolled into position for incubation. Incubation is just the process of where the mycelium grows from the grain spawn and through the sawdust and literally transforms it into a fungal organism. We have in the middle of the room here a lot of the exotic varieties, lion's mane, a number of different oyster oyster species, Piapino, chestnut. All of those tend to incubate pretty quickly, from say 2 to 3 weeks for the lion's mane or 4 to 6 weeks for the Piapino and chestnut. And then the majority of the blocks in this room are shiitake. Shiitake we incubate for anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. The longer the better. The longer the shiitake incubates on the hardwood sawdust, the more nutrients it can gather and the higher yields. We've got probably 120,000 shiitake blocks in this room and a few hundred of each of the other species.
Wow. We're here at Mycoterra in South Deerfield, where they're growing probably millions of mushrooms right now, with Julia Coffey, who's giving us the scientific tour of how all of this stuff happens, and with Phil Corman from Season Local Hero Folk.
So, Julia, you've talked a little bit about your path here. How's it gone in terms of what path have you blazed that maybe others have followed a bit but was not here before your work?
I started Myco Farm in 2010 in a closet in my basement. We've gone through many stages of growth. My path into mushrooms really started at Evergreen State College studying soil science. Really, my big interest is natural resource systems and resiliency and soil building. The mushrooms have been a fantastic side tangent for me in this journey. In 2019, I was awarded an MDAR composting grant, which has really helped me come full circle in my journey. The MDAR composting grant allowed me to buy an in-vessel composting system to compost our spent substrate and bring it back to the soil. So I've just been growing this farm really so I can have some fantastically valuable trash to then compost. And we now have a half acre of no-till seasonal crops. Our substrate is mushroom compost. And this year when there was flooding devastation across farms, and even this building and lab flooded, that field was like a sponge. I did some calculations earlier in the year. I believe the average carbon per acre in East Coast agriculture is about 8 tons per acre. We have about 40 tons of carbon in our half acre out there. So our compost is an amazing bank for storing soil carbon. We started compost sales this year, and I'm looking to grow that and to feed the soils on other farms in the valley starting next year. I keep the mushroom farm going so I can really keep diving into this compost. Like you said, there's just so many things in the fungal kingdom to learn. Essentially, all of these bags are one organism.
That's spooky. It is Halloween season after all.
It's also a bit like cancer research.
Yeah.
It can really be humbling when I'm realized that I'm surrounded by biomass. It's got that Ghostbusters library feel.
Yeah,
to it
definitely.
right here.
Where is Slimer?
He slimed me. That's great!
You say that about the Ghostbusters library, and we were literally walking into this dark, unlit corner with 8-foot-tall shelves full of all of these organisms right beside it.
Listen. You smell something?
All of these probably millions of mushrooms in separate bags come from 2 living things.
Yes, there's 2 organisms surrounding us right now, and there's about 120,000 units of them.
You, me, Khalees, and Phil, we still outnumber them.
That mushroom library was really just incubation happening. Once the mycelium has colonized that sawdust and brought it to a critical state, then the blocks get removed from the lab and brought back to the back half of the building where we have greenhouses enclosed in the larger warehouse space. Shiitake is our primary crop. It amounts for about 80% of the 3,000 pounds we're growing a week. The shiitake initiation process starts with refrigeration. That gives them a cold shock. What we're doing is simulating natural environmental triggers to help bring on a good flush of mushrooms. We do have some lion's mane and oyster in the shiitake house right now.
Black oysters.
This is a blue oyster strain.
It's like a cult.
Really?
It's the first time I heard that, Monty.
Yeah, right?
We can go over to the actual oyster house now and take a look at some more oysters and other varieties in action.
New colors, new flavors. Lion's mane, in addition to being delicious, look like brains while they're growing.
Yeah,
and
they're
it's
huge.
pretty awesome.
It's great that they look like brains and have so many benefits. Nature's great with those things. So we have some first crop blue oysters here.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
They're really exciting to see.
They're so cute.
You could spend 2 or 3 hours harvesting this whole house. We start at one end and go down each rack from top to bottom. If it takes you, say, 3 hours, you can get back to your starting point, and material that wasn't mature when you started has grown.
Wow.
And so they can just keep you running in circles all summer. Then here we have the chestnut mushroom.
I love chestnut mushrooms.
Yeah, I think they're called the chestnut because as they form, they have these beautiful ornaments that kind of look like spines, and they also have a nice nutty taste.
We're getting sprayed right now. What's happening?
And our overhead misting system just kicked on. So we use a high pressure misting system to maintain that humid environment.
Walking through Mycotera in South Deerfield with Julia Coffey, who's the scientist behind all of these mushrooms.
It's different. There is so much science to farming, but the fungal kingdom kind of plays by its own rules. It definitely has more of a feel of a manufacturing facility. And in agriculture, I'd say nursery work compares most. Basically, what we're doing is playing God, and for me, I found a lot of God in science, and so what we're trying to do is mimic the conditions they need in the natural world and trick them into giving us food year round. And I'm sure they're just like who's tricking who, because
Here we are back in the Mycotera farm store. More environmentally, we've just been through like all of the climates of the world, it feels like, in the back there.
I do that all day, every day, like 12 different temperature and humidity environments.
So 2 questions. One is, how and where do people get your mushrooms? And the second is, how do people find out more about growing mushrooms or a tour for themselves of your facility?
Our mushrooms are available at the River Valley Food Co-ops and a number of farm stores in the valley. Atlas Farm Store right in our neighborhood, and in our very own farm store here. This month we have a couple events coming up. On the 26th, we'll actually be hosting CISA here for a farm tour. We will be offering our tour on a sliding scale for donations to the Farm Resiliency Fund, and donations over $25, folks will be able to take home one of our mushroom growing kits. So
cool.
One of those blocks that you saw in the lab, you can take home and grow your own at home. Then on the 28th, we will be doing a mushroom growing workshop at Gardener's Supply in Hadley. We'll be going over all of our mushroom kits and log inoculation practices. So if folks really find they want to take a dive into mushroom growing, there'll be a great opportunity there.
Growing your own mushrooms is really fun.
Have you done it?
I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you do it in a closet in your basement?
Sorta, yes.
It was actually like the stairs going down to the basement.
Nice.
But yes.
Now that I have a wet basement, I might as well grow mushrooms down there, right?
I often say grow it on a dinner plate on your kitchen counter so you don't forget about it. They actually require light to grow properly, and you want to make sure you can water, and then once those mushrooms start to pop out, they grow very quickly. So if you have them down in your basement and aren't looking at them on a daily basis,
They take over the home.
they can get a little overgrown and maybe attract some bugs. So just right on the kitchen counter, you can harvest them, and literally steps to the fry pan. You really don't get fresher food than that.
Phil, Julia did mention that donations to the Farm Resiliency Fund will get you a tour of Mycotera and a block of mushrooms to bring home to grow on your own. There's new developments in the world of this Farm Resiliency Fund.
Well, just that farmers have only until this Friday to apply for the second and final round through the United Way of Central Mass. And all the information is on the Central Mass United Way Fund spot and also at CISA. But the bottom line is that if a farm applied in the first round, they only can apply in the second round if their needs are $80,000 or greater. If a farm did not apply in the first round, it's game to go for them.
Thanks so much for telling us all about mushrooms.
You're welcome. Great to have you here, Monty.
Now to buy some mushrooms.
I did buy some mushrooms. Up next, Kari Castango. Oh my goodness. Like, apparently it's not just that segment, it's just today.
You got all this adrenaline coursing through your veins because of talking about your book.
Up next, Kari Castango, who just became the first person to swim the entire length of the Connecticut River. We'll also talk with the brand new executive director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, Rebecca Todd.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We are joined by Kari Castengo, a resident of South Hadley who just completed her 410-mile swim of the entirety of the Connecticut River.
Kari began her career as a research exercise physiologist at UMass, which then led her to pursue a PhD in biostatistics at the University of Pittsburgh. She also serves on the board of the Connecticut River Conservancy.
And speaking of that organization, we're also joined by the brand new executive director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, Rebecca Todd. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you both
Thanks
for
for having
coming
us.
This there's a great story, first of all, Rebecca Todd today in the Greenfield Recorder about you and taking over that organization. We'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit. But the big story this weekend, after years of swimming, but not consecutively.
Correct.
Yeah, because that would just be you'd get
Well,
prune hands.
the years are consecutive, but not the swimming.
Yeah, you stopped in between. 410 miles swimming the entirety of the length of the Connecticut River. The first person to do this?
Yes, as that we know of, yes.
Right. And is this been like chronicled by like the Guinness Book of World Records or anything like that? Did you attempt? I know there's hoops you have to jump through if you want to get into that Book of World Records, but
Well, the thing is, I don't want to be in the Book of World Records because this whole swim hasn't been about conquering the river or setting goals. It's been about creating a relationship with the river and having connection.
Tell me about where this idea came from and why.
Well, when I moved into the area, there wasn't any immediate lakes and ponds, and I was swimming at the fabulous Holyoke YMCA, but I was tired of doing flip turns. And a friend introduced me to the Connecticut River, and the first spot was Elwell Recreational Area, which is actually one of my favorite spots along the river.
Where is that?
That's just next to the Coolidge Bridge. We're
Okay.
actually where we were.
That's where we went swimming back in
Yes.
2018.
Yeah.
As part of this journey, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's a wonderful spot, but then there's the Coolidge Bridge and the Route 202 bridge, and I thought, well, it would be fun to go from, cover that distance because I don't like to necessarily stay in one spot in a sense of adventure and get to know that part of the river. And then I did that, and then I did Sunderland down to Coolidge Bridge, and then I thought, let's go for the whole river. But admittedly, when I originally said that to myself, I thought it was 200 miles long, and I figured I better Google this. And it was 410, and I'm like, all right, twice the distance, twice the fun.
So when was that very first swim that you were mentally saying this is part of swimming the river, and then how long ago was that?
Well, technically, that was in 2018. However, I opted to re-swim what I swam in 2018 to be able to swim with 7 Norwegian coins, which, as I'm showing to you here right now, I just have 3 left because I've given 4 away. But I thought it would be neat to hold the coins and have the power and the strength and that, and to say that they've gone the 410. So
Tell us about the coins. Where?
Well, they're Norwegian coins. I happen to have gone back to Norway with my mother. She's from Norway. I'm first-generation American, and we went. It was a special trip to go to Denmark because my great-grandfather was from there, and it just happened to be when you exchange currency, you have some left over, and the Norwegian coins are such that by design they have holes in them because back during the war, the currency was much less than I believe it was Denmark. And in order to be able to distinguish the coins, just much like the Canadian quarter and the U.S. quarter, holes were put in the Norwegian coins so they can make the difference. And it just a symbol of my family heritage. I'm also part Ukraine, the Baltic area, and they help motivate me because at times when things got tough, it's like we got to go get the coins down the river.
Call upon your ancestors to help guide
exactly.
you.
Indeed. What was the most difficult section of the route to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, what popped up in my head from one perspective is logistics. This past year, I pretty much had majority of work. All the distance was at least a 3.5-hour drive one way. So just getting up there physically and then not knowing that section of the river intimately made it somewhat challenging. However, Tim Lewis, who's been phenomenal, and he's paddled the entire river, has been a tremendous resource and a great friend for me.
He kind of kept an eye on you while you were swimming to make sure that you were safe, right?
Correct.
Both of you are board members of the Connecticut River Conservancy as well?
Yes.
So this was done not only for your own, self-actualization or for fun, but to draw awareness to the work of the Connecticut River Conservancy and your volunteerism on the board?
Absolutely. And actually, it was just this past June that I became a trustee.
Nice. Yeah. And Tim, how long is he, your boatman, has been involved with the Connecticut River Conservancy?
On the board a year prior.
Uh-huh.
But he's the head of the Great Meadows Trust.
Land Trust.
Land Trust.
So you've all been involved in this river preservation. Another thing I read about your journey was that, you wanted to call attention to the fact that the Connecticut River used to be called, I think, the best landscaped sewer in America, but now is swimmable in all 410 miles, right?
That's correct.
To show the power of we can go back sometimes and make right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think this is what's interesting to me. Kari's dedication in swimming the river is mirrored by the dedication of many people who have spent their lives getting the Connecticut River to be a fishable, swimmable, drinkable river. And it wasn't always that way. So we are lucky to have the people with the kind of foresight and dedication that Carrie showed, and that the Connecticut River Conservancy has been bringing to this watershed since 1952, since 20 years before the Clean Water Act.
That is Rebecca Todd, who's the brand new executive director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, just started a week ago, and Kari Costango, who is on the board of trustees, who has just completed this weekend swimming the entirety, 410 miles of the Connecticut River. We're going to take a little break, and we'll have more with the two of them coming up in just a bit.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
Wash my soul. I will come to your river. Wash my soul again.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We are with Kari Costango and Rebecca Todd of the Connecticut River Conservancy. And Kari has just completed swimming the entirety of all 410 miles of the Connecticut River. I know that there was a party, well, not necessarily a party, but a gathering of the Connecticut River Conservancy at the end of this journey in Old Lyme. But were there other moments where the organization came out to meet you while you were doing this swim?
Short answer is no, but they were instrumental and very helpful with regarding being a resource to connecting me with people at different parts of the river to either gain access, to help troubleshoot certain areas, or just to gain a better understanding of the river.
What did you do in certain locations? Like I live in Turner's Falls. There's a huge dam that if you decide you're going to swim over it, you will die. How did you do that part?
Well,
how did you avoid death?
How did you avoid death?
No, I exited the water, paid attention, or adhered to the safety signs. Went up to came up to the buoys, came out, and then at a later point put in just below Turner's Falls and took advantage actually of the water release and covered the 11 miles from Turner Falls to Sunderland in 2 hours and 8 minutes in the summer solstice of 2018.
And that, is one of the issues that I think you're going to have to deal with now, Rebecca Todd, who is the executive director of the Connecticut River Conservancy, what it means for the Connecticut River when all of a sudden the Northfield pumping station or a First Light in Turner's Falls releases in large swath tons of water or redirects it to the different canals, and what that means for the life of the aquaculture in the river. Are those some of the priorities that you in this new role as the executive director are going to be facing with the relicensing of these dams?
Absolutely. Our staff have been working on the FERC relicensing of the main stem hydroelectric dams.
Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Thank you. Since 2012. And relicensing comes up. It's really essentially a once-in-a-lifetime event for most people. So we are devoting significant resources to making sure that we are advocating for not only the communities and property owners along the banks of the Connecticut, but also the aquatic organisms that otherwise don't have a voice.
Like the federally endangered short-nosed sturgeon that is right where we're mentioning right now, and one of the only known spawning sites right there.
And I'm sorry, and it's every 40 to 50 years that these licenses
is when
come up?
is when relicensing happens. So we are friends. We are in the thick of it, and I'm happy to say that as the newest kid at the conservation at the conservancy, I am blessed with a fantastic staff, and as you can tell by our conversation with Kari this afternoon, tremendously dedicated board. And I want to highlight that Kari's dedication was also inspired and incredibly athletic. And she did it all by herself. She didn't have a corporate sponsor. She worked with the river. She didn't, as she said, she didn't conquer it. She strove to understand the river and the best and the fastest way to make it downriver. And just to give our listeners some context, she swum the length of the Connecticut River, which is approximately the distance from Boston to Baltimore.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And she swam it. So this really, we're all, I think, in awe of her accomplishment.
I know we've been talking about how long the trip was, like in terms of miles, but how long did it actually take you to finish the 410 miles?
So I restarted the clock with the coins in 2019, and I pretty much swam on the weekends from Memorial Day to early October. And in 2000, I believe it was 21, and I took a 4-month sabbatical to try to make more progress, and it was quite a wet summer. But
Yeah, which makes it hard to swim in the river and not overly safe. You can go to the Connecticut River Conservancy's website, Is It Clean?, to find out if your part of the river is clean for swimming and boating. In the minute we have left, Kari Costango, who just swam the length of the Connecticut River, what's something that you learned about yourself from doing this huge athletic endeavor?
Let's see, myself. Just that that my love for swimming can make a difference, and that I encourage everyone to find what it is that they enjoy and find a way to connect with their communities, because everybody has something to offer. So originally I was not hesitant, but I just thought, well, I'm just swimming. I don't know what I'm contributing. But everybody has something to contribute, and I invite you to find that out what that is and give back.
Now we're here on the radio talking about the health of the river because of this wacky idea that you had. I'm a sucker for a wacky idea like that.
Oh, pun intended?
Kari Costango, who just swam the length of the Connecticut River, and Rebecca Todd of the Connecticut River Conservancy, the brand new executive director. Congratulations on that role.
Thank you. I'm thrilled.
Tomorrow on the Fabulous 413, a glimpse at the other candidate running for mayor of Pittsfield, Peter Marchetti.
Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe, witnesses the first Pakistani to become an astronaut when she flew last week with the space tourism company Virgin Galactic.
And the word nerd, Emily Brewster from Greenfield, on Springfield's Noah Webster's successes and failures in changing the way we spell words in U.S. English.
He had some good ideas. Not all of them flew. Special thanks to Spouse, Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, Darling Side, Suitcase Junket, Blue Oyster Cult, Florence and the Machine, Ibeyi, Julie London, and Tina Turner.
Our director is Tony Journeyman Juggler Dunn.
Our engineers are Betsy, Vinyl Lankto, Phil, Lurkmaster Flex, Bishop, Kara, Hoping Tomorrow Goes Smoothly Foster, Bart, Spare Laptop, Conduit Rankin, and Punk Rude Boy Sharp Cheddar Dubé.
I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We'll see you tomorrow on The Fabulous 413.